I want to make a video on Mark Zuckerberg and what I think his personality type is. So, um, I'm not aware on the details of the history of the founding of Facebook, other than that there were several other people involved, and one of them was Eduardo Saverin. Um, I don't know much of the details of him particularly. And I haven't, however, um, Zuckerberg went to Harvard for perhaps like a year or so, maybe less than a year. And he founded the precursor to Facebook. So I'm not aware on the details of that. I am aware of Facebook because I used it. And I would say that um, to understand um, what drives people to connect to, old friends, high school reunion, that type of stuff, college friends, fraternity or sorority folks, from decades ago, especially like an older person or someone in their 40s. Um, I would imagine that introverted thinking would have to be used to understand which programming aspects to focus on when it comes to, figuring out things like layout and all that stuff. And also how to manage the company when, you know, the Facebook became much bigger, and how to handle that would probably have to involve introverted thinking. And not extroverted. Much big difference because you actually have to understand um on what people actually. It's because it's like um extrovert thinking is useful for a lot of things, right? Managing a social media website, especially on especially one that is like more general use purpose rather than like a specific smaller form. Um, Probably introverted thinking makes more sense than extrovert. So we could definitely roll out 8 types of law. I suppose we could even roll out INTJ too, because um, let me try to elaborate this, because you know the internet has lots of different smaller websites, especially from the 90s and the early 2000s. So INTJ would be plausible if you're focusing on the NI. However, you're totally forgetting about the thinking function. So, because you have to understand what makes people, you know, like, if you were to introduce a social media, right, and it has like a sizable audience, right, would it be? It doesn't matter what type of website it is, you know, it just like you were to introduce it to your friends and family, right? And try to convince them to use that website. Um, the thing is that it's pretty easy to make a smaller forum community. Um, Extroverted thinking can totally figure that out, right? But to make a general purpose of the success that Facebook has, I think extroverted thinking would not be the figures because um, because general purpose. I mean, I'm not aware I'm the founder of MySpace or anything. But MySpace had success, but not the level that Facebook has. So I'm not going to make because I haven't done much research on MySpace. I'm not going to, and really I haven't. You don't need to learn all the details to type Zuckerberg. I mean, I suppose you could. Um, but the thing is, a lot of people are just stuck on, oh, he had this NI idea. That's not correct. It's not correct for a lot of reasons. Because a lot of people just think that it's just a brilliant idea. You know. Then like they totally forget one thing. He had a lot of, it wasn't just Eduardo, right? It was at least 10 other people coming up with equally brilliant ideas. So he had a bunch of people to bounce around ideas with, right? And they definitely got credit for it. They definitely got they got like what 1-2% stock in Facebook, and or and that's definitely enough money. Like they did nothing but hang around with Zuckerberg, and they are able to. They're basically set for life, right? I mean, obviously they were employees later, but they basically had a guaranteed job for life. Just because they hang out with him, right? And just because they got to know him, right? So, and obviously they did. Even Eduardo is now like at least a millionaire, right? So he's basically set for life, which is a far better circumstance than many people out there in the world. So in that case, um, he was bouncing around ideas and stuff, and it just the chemistry and stuff worked, and it became successful. So in that case, Zuckerberg is most certainly an extrovert in terms of extroverted intuition. An extroverted intuition is basically the ability to bounce around all these ideas um, and just not be able to bounce around all these brilliant ideas and not plunge into basically quitting in the middle. It's easy to quit in the middle of this because you know rather than take the project to its completion. Um, so because of this, we can definitely rule out the gamma types. But we already ruled out the A types, so but we does it mean that we could rule out the beta types? We could. Um, but then we would throw out the NI function entirely. So in this case, you have to consider that you know Eduardo did end up leaving the United States and giving up U.S. citizenship. That was mostly because of various things, like he wasn't actually from the U.S., so it's not too difficult to give up U.S. citizenship. So not only that, I mean, he already graduated with his degree. Zuckerberg didn't. Um, so I also consider that Zuckerberg is, I also consider that, company of his, because the thing is, social media company weren't, it's not necessarily new, right? The concept is relatively simple. The only difference is that he just, you know, he and his group of, 10 people ish, just came up with a great idea and they were able to execute it. But the type Zuckerberg did for himself, um, I would imagine that we can certainly, now, the thing is, I gave you an argument for introvert thinking, and I gave you an argument for extrovert intuition. However, um, is it convincing? No, that's up to you. It's just, um, it's just that I'm not going to make the argument that he has these functions, but I will say that he is able to understand the, you know, the person, the average person, they're introduced to Facebook for the first time. This is the first time they heard of it. They realized that some people from earlier parts of their life used it. They were introduced to it, and it's a very easy process to sign up and such. It's really the thing that makes it. The thing is the layout and the details matter, right? The fact that it's light blue, the fact that it's um, the fact that is uh, the fact that you can put your profile picture in a certain way, the details make a difference. Now, I would have to compare it to other similar websites, mostly the smaller websites that are not as heard of. It's mostly more like let's say if you were trying to create your own internet space with just you and your friends. It's just a very the thing is Zuckerberg trying to you know get away from that model, right? In that case, um, that's the argument that some people have with NI. And it's like, I suppose that would make sense if it's iEnergy or eEnergy or even ISTP or ESTP. Um, however, there's a problem here. The problem is, and this is my argument for any, is that you have it's just that in order to make it, you know, at the level it is, being basically one of the top 3 websites in the Alexa list, I think it's called, um, I would imagine any makes more sense because then how are you going to it's how are you going to have the SJ users get in, basically be a willing participant. Um, and not only that, he's from American culture, so um, how are you going to get people to take it seriously? In that case, I would argue that he's an INTP.